Have you ever wondered how people create those cool drag and drop animations? Well, in this one, I'll be showing you just that. As you can see, as I drag, there is a up animation, and whenever I hover over the drop zone, the animation changes, and whenever I drop it, then the animation also changes and an object appears in the middle. It will require only HTML, CSS, and quite a bit of JavaScript, but it will be fully customizable, so let's get started. Alright, so the way we're gonna get this started is by having an index.html. All I have here is a style.css linked and a script.js. In our style.css, I have a background color and an overflow hidden, and our script.js is completely empty. So we start off in our HTML by creating a div with the class wrapper, and inside this div we are going to have yet another div. This one is going to be a container for the drag objects, so let's give it that class. Then below this div we are going to create another div. This one is going to be our drop zone with the class drop. Inside this one we'll have a div with the class drop text. And inside the drag objects we are going to have three divs, so div dot, they will be with the class drag times 3, and inside each of them there is going to be a div with the class drag text. I'll fill up the text for these little containers, and basically we are done with our HTML. So moving on to our style.css, we are going to first format the wrapper. The wrapper, this one is important. We are going to say user select none, and this will disable default behavior when you can start selecting images, for example. This will be important for the drag and drop functionality. Then we are going to simply use some flexbox, set its flex direction to be column, and justify just everything to the center. Now comes the drag objects. Inside this we'll be copying the flexbox from the wrapper, except that this one is actually going to be a row, and we'll be adding some extra attribute for the responsivity, which is going to be flex wrap. So this will realign the items whenever the window shrinks. Then we are going to format the drag text and the drop text together. Their font family will be Helvetica. Their font weight will be 900. I simply assign them a color, font size of 50 pixels, and the text align will be of type center. Now when we individually style the drop text, you know, when I dropped it in the intro, it appeared, but by default it should be invisible, so we'll set opacity to 0 by default. Then let's start with the drop zone. Its position will be relative because it's going to contain absolute items. Then its display will be flex, so it's going to use flexbox. It's going to justify everything that's inside it to the center and vertically as well to the center. Its width will always take up 70% of the window, but its height is going to be fixed. Some margin settings. It will have a border, 5 pixel dashed border, and choose a color of your liking. Its border radius will be 15 pixels to round it a little bit. Again, choose a background color of your liking, and we are going to apply a transition effect to it, because the background color, so the background color attribute was using the 0.4 seconds ease transition. That's what made it switch when I dropped so smoothly. Then we are going to create a class. This will be of type collide, and all it's going to do is set a different background color. Then again, a class that will apply later. This will be the drop complete class. It will have a different background color and the border of none. And now the drag boxes are up next. Their position will be relative because we'll be cloning the nodes and they need to be apparent to the absolute clone. They will have some margin settings, some width and height. Give them a background color, also round them by 15 pixels, so border radius. The cursor, whenever you hover over it, will be of type move. Their z-index will be 30 pixels, and we'll have a transition for it. First off, for its opacity, 0.3 seconds is animation for the opacity, and we'll put a comma here, and then it's going to have a transform transition as well, which is going to be 0.6 seconds and ease. Other than that, just copy the flexbox where we align everything to the center. Now let's start the dragged attribute. This one is also going to be applied from JavaScript. So the first that's going to be really important is the absolute attribute to add, because this will get it out of the DOM flow and we'll be able to drag it around and it will render accordingly. And I will just copy the rest and explain it. The first one is simple. There is a basic box shadow, not much about it, 0 offset, it's 20 pixels and you give it a color. The background will be a linear gradient, a 45-degree linear gradient. This is what you saw in the intro for the animation. It's important that its background size is twice as much, because when we apply the animation, which will be called gradient animation, it will have 3 seconds, an ease transition on it, and it will be infinite. Then we are going to be changing how big the actual background is, and that's what's going to give it the animating gradient. Then we'll move on to the ready drop. This will be when you hover over the drop zone. There will be a slight opacity change. There will be an opacity transition, which will be 0.3 seconds, and the ease animation or transition. And its animation is going to be, we'll create these later, shake, 0.25 seconds, ease, and this will be infinite as well. Then we are going to create the release class, which will be the opacity 1, so it's going to reset it. Copy the transition from here, but it will be 0.5 seconds. These are just some fine-tuned values, you can play around with these. It's going to have yet another animation. This is the third, the last. This animation will be called drop, and it will be 0.4 seconds ease and forward. So it's not going to be infinite like the others. And now I just copy paste the animations and then explain. So here the first animation, the drop. This is what's applied when you release it. It's simply going to by at 0%, the scale will be normal, then it will grow a bit, then it will go down to 0, and since its transition is set, it will do it with ease. As for the gradient animation, as I said, the animation comes from the background size and the position being set, so its background position is always changing and its scale is also always changing. As for the shake, all we're really going to do is from 0, rotate it to one side, rotate it back to 0, then another side and back to 0, and this is going to infinitely loop. And now finally we can move on to our JavaScript. So first we'll be getting the wrapper element, the drop zone and the drag objects inside it. So const wrapper, and we'll be doing this with the document.querySelector, so we'll tell it what class we are looking for, and this will be the wrapper class. Then we are going to use the same for the drop zone. Document.querySelector, but this time we are looking for the drop class, so the drop zone. We are going to also store an array, which is going to be the drag elements. And this will be using the document.querySelector all, so pay attention, query selector all, and we are looking for all of the elements with the drag class. Then we loop through all of the drag elements with a for each loop and then attach an event listener to them with the mouse whenever the mouse button is held down. So drag elements dot for each. The for each is going to take in a callback function, an arrow function this time, and the for each is going to give us an element. So the drag element that we are currently on, because it goes over all the elements, we are going to say drag element dot add event listener, and here we can choose a lot of types of event listeners, but we are going to choose the mouse down event listener, which yet again is going to receive an arrow function, and this arrow function is going to receive the event object, which I'll just say E for now. Now let's create a boolean value, a boolean variable inside it, is dragging, which will be true whenever the mouse is down, of course. This is dragging is only going to be alive, only going to be available inside the event listener. And we are going to create another variable. This one is going to be called drag clone. We are creating from the drag element that's passed in from the for each loop. We are going to call the clone node function. We are going to say true, because if you read it now, it says returns a copy of a node if deep is true, which we want it to be true. The copy also includes the node's descendants, so the children, for example, if we have a text inside it. And that's exactly what we want. So the drag element is getting cloned, and we are storing it in the drag clone variable. Then we are going to say the drag clone dot class list dot add. So we are adding a new class to it. We'll be adding the dragged class. Then, since we created and cloned the object, even styled it, but it's not yet visible because we need to append it to the wrapper, for example. So you need to append it to an already existing element. And we are going to append as a child to the wrapper, the drag clone. So if we have a look now only at this bare functionality, if I now click this, you can see that there is a clone created, but we cannot do anything with it. It's not even instantiated at the right position. And I can do more whenever I click over these. Now we'll be going over to the positioning when we will actually drag things around. So first of all, let original pos x, so on the x-axis, it's going to be the drag element dot get bounding client rect dot left. So essentially what we're saying is that the drag element which got parsed in, we are interested in its rect. So since it's a div, it's a rectangle, but you can do it with any object, and we want to get its left position. This will be on the x-axis. I'll show you here. So if we would to console log out this, and let's say I click on the top left element, then it would get, as for the left, the left side as of in an x position, and we'll just copy this, paste it, and this will be the original position y, and we are interested in the top. So if I console log this out, it will say, I don't know how many pixels these are from the border of the whole body. It will say x pixel there. We need to do some other calculations as well that include the original pos x and y. So let start x will be equal to the a.client x with e.client x. Whenever we work with the event object, the client x and the client y are going to be the coordinates of our mouse. And we need the coordinates of our mouse minus the original position x. This is required because to make it later when we drag the calculation, we need the mouse to where we clicked on the screen minus how much is it offsetted by the original position from the left top corner of our actual element, because that's how it will be properly moved, properly positioned, so that it's visually better. We'll do the same, but this time it's going to be y. So I made some console log statements to make you better understand. We just have a look at those values. You can see that the top, so the X position, which is the original position, and the Y position are 17 and 18. Those are the top left corner. From 0, 0, 0, 0 is the total corner of your website. And the mouse position is always different whenever I click anywhere. But you see the others stay the same. And now all this calculation, after that, we are going to say actually do something. So the drag clone.style.left. This is a CSS attribute that we are setting, and this is only going to take effect if it is of position absolute or relative. And since the direct class is of type absolute, is taken out of the DOM flow, we will be able to position it. So the left is going to be equal to the original pos x, but this won't be enough because in CSS you give either a percent or pixel or rem units, whatever. So we are also going to say pixel. And we are going to do the same for the top value, but with the y, the original pos y. So this will happen at the start of the drag. It will get positioned to where our mouse is. Or sorry, not necessarily our mouse, it will be to the original position. So if I start this now, you can see it instantiated one there, then it instantiated one at the second element and the third. Now moving on, we'll be creating two functions. One is going to be called mouse drag and one mouse release. These two functions are only going to be available and alive inside the event listener of mouse down. And they are both going to receive the event object. So starting with the mouse drag function, we are also going to, we are only going to execute anything if we are dragging. So if is dragging in true, then we are going to say the drag clone.style.left. So the X position of the clone should be equal to the event.clientX, and the event.clientX is always going to be the mouse position. So this time the X position of our mouse minus the start X. And this way we are going to get a proper pixel value compared to the corner of our page, so that the absolute value can be set. And since we are setting a CSS attribute, we'll be needing to assign a unit to it, which will be pixels. Now we'll be doing the same, but for our top position, and instead of X, we are going to use the Y value. And now to actually move on with our code, we need to create a function. Down here, below everything, we are going to create a function called isColliding. The isColliding function is going to receive three parameters. One is going to be an X position, a Y position, and the third is going to be an element that we are checking against. So if we are colliding with a certain element, which I'm going to say element 2. Now inside this, we are going to get the positions of the element 2. So let element to rect is going to be equal to the element2.get client, get bounding client rect, just like we did with our clone node. And now we're going to return a Boolean value. So we are going to say that I'll copy paste the expression and then explain. So here, if the left is greater, or X is greater than the left value, and it's less than the right value, so we are horizontally inside the drop zone or the object that we're checking against, and if the Y value is also between the two values, which is the bottom and the top, so we are inside the ranges of the rect that we're checking against, then we are going to return true. If any of these fail, then we are not colliding and we are going to return false. So we can come back to our mouse drag function and we are going to say yet another if statement. If we are colliding with the event dot client x, so the x position of our mouse, the event dot client y, which is the y position of our mouse, and the drop zone which we got at the top of our code, then we are going to remove and add some classes. So the drag clone dot class list dot add, we are going to add the ready drop class. And as for the drop zone, it's also going to receive a class. This will be the collide class. Else, if we are not colliding or we've left the drop zone while dragging, we are going to remove these classes. So I copy these and remove these. And this is going to get called even if we are just simply dragging. So you could say then this is false because this is going to throw errors, but it's not, because if it does not already have the class that we are trying to remove, it won't throw errors, it just won't do anything. So it's completely safe to do it like this. We've made our function here, but we are not really using it. If I was to drag now, we couldn't see anything. And to solve that for testing purposes, we are going to say window.add event listener, and we are interested in the mouse move event. So whenever we move our mouse, we will execute the mouse drag function. So if we test this now, if I start dragging, you can see there is it's stuck to our mouse. If I come to the drop zone, the animation changes, but I cannot actually let go of it. In fact, I've already let the mouse button up and it's completely stuck to my mouse anyways. So I have to refresh to make it go away. And we are going to work on the mouse release function. It's going to implement the same, so it's only going to execute if we are already dragging. And whenever we release, no matter what happens, we want to remove an event listener from our window. So we're going to say window.remove event listener. We are looking for the mouse move event and we want to remove the mouse drag function from that event. And this is simply to prevent memory leaks in our code, because otherwise we would constantly keep adding and adding to the window and it would run out of memory. Now another condition, which is going to be the same as in here, so I'm going to copy this. If we are colliding with the drop zone and releasing the mouse button, what are we going to do then? Well, we are going to say the drag clone.classList.remove. We are going to remove first of all the ready drop class, because that's what we added when we dragged over. We are also going to add a new class to the drag clone called release. And what's important is that after we finished our dragging and dropped it, we are going to release a new set timeout. So here, after 400 milliseconds, this is because that's how much our animation lasts. If you have different animations, you can play around with it. We are going to say the drag clone.remove. So we're completely removing the drag clone from our DOM. And I just realized we weren't zoomed in, so sorry about that. This is what we're doing if we are colliding. Else, if we release anywhere where there is no drop zone, then we're going to say the drag clone.style.transition. That's the attribute that we're going to edit. Its top will be 0.4 seconds. So the top attribute will have 0.4 seconds transition. The left is also going to have 0.4 seconds and the opacity is also going to have it. This is to animate it back smoothly, because otherwise if we didn't have this, then it would simply teleport back to its place. And we don't really want that. The other thing that we are going to do is the drag clone.style.top. we are going to set it back to its original position that we've stored. Remember, you need to add the pixels here. And we are going to do the same, and sorry, not X, but Y. We need to do the same, but for the left. So this way it will smoothly just slide back to its place, to its place, while the opacity is also going down. And what we are going to say here is drag clone.style.opacity will be down to 0. This is why we needed the opacity transition. And again, it's important to make a set timeout here after it's done, so that it actually gets removed from our DOM. And after all of this has been completed, we are going to set the isDragging to be false if we release the mouse button, of course. And then we are also going to remove the event listener on the mouse up event. We are going to remove the mouse release method from the mouse up event. This is again to prevent memory leaks from our code. And to actually apply this, I'll copy this, paste it here. We are looking for the mouse up event, and we are going to use the mouse release function whenever we release our mouse. So if you give it a try now, you can see there is the drop zone. I drop it and it's almost working. The drop zone is not yet animated. It does not show the drop yet. We'll be working that as a final touch. But if I release it somewhere where it's not in the drop zone, it animates back. It goes back to its original place. So as for our last touch, we are going to say we need a function that's going to execute after we drop. So function after drop. And inside the after drop function, we are going to do a lot of removing and adding of classes. So let's start with the drop zone. Drop zone.classlist.add, and we are going to add the drop complete class. Other than that, we'll select with the query selector. We are looking for the drop text element, and its style and opacity will be set to 1. So because we hid it by default in our CSS, we need to set it back. And the drop zone.classlist.remove, we also need to remove it after the drop, the collide class. I'll use a set timeout, and this set timeout is going to execute after 2500 milliseconds. We are going to say the drop zone.classlist.remove. We are removing the drop complete that we added before. And we are also going to say document.query selector. So anyways, I just copy paste this. Basically, this is what we are going to be doing. Copy, and we are setting it to. And don't forget that even though we wrote this function, we are not applying it yet. So before we remove the node, we are going to call the after drop function. And now if we come back to our site, if I start dragging, it's working as expected. And if I drop it, there you can see the drop appears, and then after 2500 milliseconds, it disappears. And you can keep doing this. So basically we are done with this functionality. This video was requested by one of our viewers, and if you have anything that you couldn't handle, you want us to look into, make sure to comment down below. If you found value in this video and would like to see more, please consider giving us a like, maybe even subscribe. And other than that, I hope to see you in the next one.